English Academy Plus podcast, your daily dose of real, unfiltered English.
Not simplified English, real English.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Jack.
And I'm Emma. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode.
Now, Emma, I have a confession to make. Yesterday, I was scrolling through my phone, and I saw an ad for a plain white t-shirt. Guess how much it cost?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe $15? $20?
Try $4. $4 for a brand new, manufactured, shipped from across the world t-shirt. And my first thought wasn't, wow, what a great deal. My first thought was, how is that even possible without someone, somewhere, being exploited?
That is exactly the question we are asking today. Today, we are diving into the complex and often controversial world of fast fashion. We're talking about consumerism, the true cost of our clothes, and the environmental impact of looking trendy.
Because this is our B2C1 advanced track. We aren't just going to give you basic shopping vocabulary. We are going to debate the ethics of the fashion industry and equip you with the advanced idioms and collocations you need to discuss modern consumerism. So, grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's get into it. So, Emma, let's define fast fashion. It's essentially the rapid production of high volumes of clothing designed to replicate current trends at a very low cost.
Exactly. It used to be that fashion brands released 2 or 4 collections a year. Spring, summer, autumn, winter. Now, some brands are releasing new styles every single week. It's designed to make you feel like your clothes are out of date almost immediately.
Which has led us to become a throwaway society.
A throwaway society. This is a very common phrase in environmental discussions. A throwaway society is a culture where people consume items quickly and throw them away rather than repairing or reusing them.
Back in our grandparents' generation, clothes were an investment. If you bought a winter coat, it might cost an arm and a leg, but you expected it to last for 10 years.
Notice that phrase, to cost an arm and a leg. This is a classic English idiom, meaning something is extremely expensive.
Right. But today, because clothes no longer cost an arm and a leg, we don't value them. We buy a shirt for a Friday night party, wear it once, and then throw it in the back of the closet. The mindset has shifted from quality to quantity.
But Jack, I have to play devil's advocate here. Isn't fast fashion a good thing for people who can't afford to spend a fortune on clothes? It democratizes fashion. It allows teenagers and working-class people to express themselves and look fashionable without going into debt.
That's the main defense of fast fashion, and it's a strong argument. But we have to ask ourselves, who is actually subsidizing that cheap price? If you aren't paying for the true cost of the garment, someone else is paying for it with their labor, or the planet is paying for it.
Which brings us to the environmental impact. The fashion industry is notoriously one of the most polluting industries in the world.
The numbers are staggering. It takes over 20,500 liters of water to produce a single cotton t-shirt. That is the amount of water an average person drinks in 2.5 years.
And then there is the issue of synthetic fabrics, like polyester, which is essentially plastic. Every time you wash a cheap polyester sweater, it sheds microplastics into the water system, which eventually end up in the ocean.
Not to mention the carbon footprint of shipping these clothes all over the world.
A carbon footprint. We use this collocation to describe the total amount of greenhouse gases generated by our actions. The global supply chain of fast fashion has a massive carbon footprint.
Yet as consumers, it's so easy for us to turn a blind eye.
To turn a blind eye. This means to completely ignore something that you know is wrong or problematic. Because as the pollution is happening in factories thousands of miles away, we turn a blind eye and just enjoy our cheap clothes.
Exactly. We see a shiny storefront. We don't see the toxic dye being dumped into a river in another country.
And it's not just the environment. It's the human cost. The pressure to produce clothing so cheaply and quickly creates a race to the bottom.
A race to the bottom. This is a fantastic business idiom. A race to the bottom happens when companies compete to lower prices, and as a result, they continually lower their standards for quality, safety, and wages.
Brands demand lower and lower prices from factories, and the factories, in turn, pay their workers absolute minimum wages, often not enough to live on, and force them to work in unsafe conditions.
But big brands always claim they have strict codes of conduct. They say, "We audit our factories."
Yes, but the reality is often swept under the rug.
Swept under the rug. If you sweep a problem under the rug, you try to hide it or ignore it because it is embarrassing or difficult to deal with, rather than actually fixing it.
Subcontracting is a huge issue. A brand might audit a factory, but that factory secretly subcontracts the work to another unregulated factory with terrible conditions. The brand can claim ignorance, and the problem is just swept under the rug.
It makes you wonder how much responsibility lies with the brand and how much lies with the consumer who demands a $5 shirt.
Speaking of consumer responsibility, it's time for today's roleplay.
In this scenario, I am trying to convince Emma to go on a massive shopping spree at a fast fashion mall, but Emma is trying to convince me to go to a secondhand vintage store instead. As usual, there will be some friction.
Let's listen.
Come on, Emma. They're having a massive end-of-season sale at the mall. We can literally buy an entire new wardrobe for under $100. I need some new outfits for the weekend.
Jack, you already have a closet full of clothes you never wear. Why don't we go to the thrift store downtown instead? You can find unique, high-quality pieces there without contributing to all that waste.
Thrift stores smell weird, and it takes hours to find anything good. Why would I spend $20 on a used shirt when I can get a brand new one for $5?
Because that $5 shirt is going to fall apart after 3 washes. And do you ever think about why it's so cheap? The people making it are barely getting paid.
Look, I'm just one person. Me boycotting one store isn't going to change global capitalism. I'm on a budget, and I want to look good. Stop trying to make me feel guilty for buying a t-shirt.
I'm not trying to make you feel guilty. I'm just saying we vote with our wallets. If we keep buying disposable clothes, they'll keep making them.
All right, let's unpack that. I was playing the typical defensive consumer. My argument was essentially, I am on a budget. Convenience is king, and my individual choices don't matter in the grand scheme of things.
And as the friend advocating for sustainable choices, I use the phrase, we vote with our wallets. This is a very powerful expression. It means that how you choose to spend your money shows what you support. If you spend money on unethical companies, you are voting for them to continue their practices.
It's a tough debate, because the person in the role play is right. Fast fashion is incredibly convenient and affordable. Overhauling your shopping habits requires time and effort.
But the counter-argument is that cheap is an illusion. We end up buying 10 cheap shirts that fall apart, instead of buying one high-quality shirt that lasts.
Let's take a quick pause. If you are enjoying this deep dive into real English conversation and advanced vocabulary, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We release a new episode every week to help you bridge the gap between textbook English and real-world fluency. So, Emma, what is the solution here? Is the answer to only buy from luxury, ethical brands? Because, let's be honest, most people cannot afford a $100 t-shirt, even if it is organic cotton.
No, the solution isn't necessarily luxury. The easiest and most sustainable choice is simply to buy less. We need to shift away from treating shopping as a hobby or a form of entertainment.
And if you do need to buy something, secondhand shopping or thrifting, Ray, has become incredibly popular, especially among Gen Z.
Buying vintage or secondhand extends the life cycle of a garment. You aren't creating any new demand for raw materials.
And there's a certain pride now in wearing an outfit and being able to say, "Thanks, I thrifted it." It shows you have personal style rather than just copying what a mannequin in a fast fashion store is wearing.
Ultimately, we have to move towards a circular economy, where clothes are designed to be repaired, reused, or recycled, rather than ending up in a landfill after a few months. All right, it's time for our full key phrase review. Let's recap all the B2 and C1 level language we dropped today.
First, we had a throwaway society, a culture where people consume items quickly and throw them away rather than repairing them. The rise of cheap plastics has turned us into a throwaway society.
Next, to cost an arm and a leg. To be extremely expensive. I'd love to buy sustainable brands, but they usually cost an arm and a leg.
A carbon footprint. The total amount of greenhouse gases generated by our actions. Buying locally produced clothing helps reduce your carbon footprint.
To turn a blind eye. To completely ignore something you know is wrong. Consumers often turn a blind eye to the unethical labor practices behind their cheap clothes.
A race to the bottom. A situation where companies compete by lowering standards for quality and wages to offer the lowest price. The fast fashion industry's pricing strategy has created a global race to the bottom.
Swept under the rug. To hide or ignore a difficult problem rather than fixing it. The scandal regarding the factory conditions was quickly swept under the rug by the brand.
And finally, to vote with your wallet. To show what you support through how you spend your money. If you want companies to change, you have to vote with your wallet. Fantastic review. Now, it's time for our listener practice questions. We want to hear your thoughts down in the comments.
Question 1. Do you think consumers are responsible for the problems in the fashion industry, or does the responsibility lie entirely with the brands?
Question 2. Have your shopping habits changed in the last few years? Do you buy more secondhand clothes now?
Question 3. Is it fair to expect people on low incomes to avoid fast fashion and vote with their wallets?
Well, that wraps up today's deep dive into fast fashion and consumerism. It's a complicated issue, but being aware of it is the first step toward change.
Absolutely. If you found this episode helpful, please give us a thumbs up, share it with a friend, and don't forget to subscribe. And let us know your answers to those practice questions in the comments.
Thanks for tuning in to English Academy Plus. I'm Jack.
And I'm Emma. See you in the next episode. Bye.
Goodbye, everyone.